It's odd the things we remember sometimes. I was walking down the toys aisles a couple of days ago, looking for something to give to my now soon to be 3 year old niece for her birthday. Everything was brightly colored and cheerful, starting with the turtle with a head that bobbed up and down when you pulled on its tail, and ending with what it looked like a mashup between a dragon and a fairy princess, all colored in pink. And there, dead center in the middle of the aisle, was a loosely gathered bunch of Care Bears toys. Cloying and sweet, their eyes stared up at me, as if to say what a wonderful gift they would be for a small girl of 3. I reached down and picked up the dark blue Grumpy Bear. Of course, of all the bears he has gone through, at least the least changes over the years, because I think his mind is the strongest. He's had to have no need of change in his shape or form to keep his sanity. I put the bear back down and gazed at it. The odd thing to think of back then, it was the odd Care Bear's tail I had seen too, or maybe I thought I saw. The whole thing was the quality of a fever dream to it, which it was appropriate since I was sick at the time, and I was looking at the little storm cloud on his tummy, and I remembered. It was a Sunday afternoon in March, temperature of 101, and vomiting had kept me home from school that day. I had passed the worst stages of my sickness earlier that morning, and I was now thoroughly enjoying myself on the couch. Consuming anything the TV would throw me away, my mom had left to run some errands, so I was home alone in the house. Normally I would have been abused its freedom by raiding some ice cream out of the freezer, but I was too tired though, and I still felt slightly nauseous. That might explain why I didn't change the channel when the brightly colored bears came on. At 9 years old, I had far past the age where Care Bears would have been an okay thing to watch, but tried to slightly feel sick, I let it play. I remember the villain was someone called Professor Coldheart. He looked like a cheap Mr. Freeze knockoff, with frozen blue skin, white hair, and petero hair. His whole thing was just that he hated the feelings. Because of something honesty, he reminds me of now one of those stupid Captain Planet villains. Why did they pollute the environment? Because if they didn't, there would be a villain to fight. Duh, maybe I'm expecting too much out of the show aimed for toddlers though. There was a lot of back and forth about the feelings, with the fuzzy little mascots going on and on about joy and caring. So sick or not, I was getting up to change the channel because I was going to be sick if I wanted to hear another word of caring one more time. Suddenly, Professor Coldheart pulled out a large black book, but they had promised me that if I could call them, they will end all the feelings. Coldheart exclaimed while opening the book. All the little bears seemed to be confused, except for Grumpy Bear. "Care Bears, don't let him read from that book," he exclaimed. "Tenderheart, call for the stair." The little reddish-brown bear with a heart on his tummy nodded. "Care Bears, line up," he called. But even as he did so, Coldheart began to chant. I sat on the floor and watched, eye wide. I couldn't understand a word he was saying. No, that's a lie. Or rather, it's not entirely true. He wasn't speaking in English, and he wasn't speaking any language I've ever heard. But my mind was forming pictures, and they weren't happy. They involved the large black masses and ate the stars, and quivering and squirming things long enough to wrap around the world. Tenderheart faltered, and with a hand on his head, he and the other bears quickly followed suit. "They lie in wait for the stars," I heard Tenderheart muttered. A cavernous portal opened up behind Coldheart. He giggled with a giggle full of madness and glee. Grumpy Bear stood up and stared at it in horror. Shadowy things that flickered on the edge of vision began to appear on the screen, coming from the opening, looking back. It was some fantastic animation. I haven't seen it like since. The shadowy things were just reaching forward towards Grumpy Bear. Grumpy Bear's tummy glowed and summoned forth several thunderclouds. He used them to set up a protective barrier for the bears, lightning arching from them and sizzling the shadowy things as they closed in. It wasn't going to help me enough though, and although I would have been ashamed to admit it, my 9-year-old self was kind of scared. The shadowy things bore a very strange resemblance, the things flickering though through my own head now. Grumpy Bear looked from Coldheart to the bears, and then, I swear to God, straight at me. I mean, I know he was just animated to be looking at the camera, but it felt like he could see me, and whoever else is watching. Feel our fear. He nodded. I have to break the connection, he said, turning back to Cold Heart. His eyes closed and fully concentrated, tummy lighting up brighter than I had ever seen. A gigantic thundercloud appeared from above them, filling the entire building. Cold Heart looked up in awe, and then a gigantic lightning strike fell from the cloud. At first I thought it was going to strike a Cold Heart, but instead it fell at his feet. He screeched and jumped backwards, losing his balance, and when he did, he fell backwards into the portal behind him. Still holding the black book, there was a mighty clap of thunder, and the screen turned white. For a moment, I wondered if the power surge had hurt the TV. After a few moments, it had cleared though. Grumpy Bear was going to each bear now, picking them off the floor, patting them on the back, saying a few encouraging words. I can't live without it, a green bear with a clover on his belly said. I saw things. So many things. Don't worry, Good Luck, Grumpy Bear said, patting the bear's back. You won't have to. None of you will. Then it rolled to the credits. I crawled back over to my couch and hauled myself back up. I was slightly disappointed. I wanted to know what Grumpy meant. But I pushed it out the back of my mind. It was just a Care Bears episode after all. I remember the first movie came out slightly afterwards, serving sort of a reboot to the franchise. No More Cold Heart was a whole different pastel-colored animals to play along with bears. I never saw the episode again, and I never bothered seeking it out. 13 years later, I found myself in an English literature class at an out-of-state college. It was one of those classes where everyone from freshmen to seniors could be found in it. I was in my senior year, and I had just needed a random class to fill out my general education block. For some reason, at the end of the class, a bunch of us got to talk about shows we used to watch when we were little. The subject eventually turned into the Care Bears. You know, I saw the strangest episode when I was 9, I said. I quickly outlined the dramatics of Cold Heart in the book. Everyone stared at me like I've gone off my guard. Are you sure you just didn't hallucinate it? A guy to my right asked. We called the plaster said. Wait, he's right, a blonde freshman named Callie exclaimed. But it wasn't Cold Heart, it was No Heart. Who the heck is No Heart? I asked, turning to her. He's the main villain from the Novelina series, the one that came after the Deke episodes. And he had a black book like you said, and all the bears seemed to be confused except Grumpy. He was flipping out. Also, No Heart had called his shadowy monster things to the young ones, she said. I don't know how it ended, but it actually scared me though, and I changed the channel. She then shook my head. It was a Care Bears episode though, so how bad could it have been? She became thoughtful for a second. It was near the end of the Novelina run though. Might have been the last episode. Yeah, I vote for the both of you are nuttier than the Nut House, Plaster said, and the group laughed in agreement. The conversation piqued my curiosity, though. The school had some computers that were free to use for students that use a ran blazing fast style up with the speed of 56 kbps. This was back in 1998, so the internet was not the instant answer places now. Hell, Google was still titled Google Beta, and I viewed it with suspicion because it was new. I ended up using Yahoo, and let me tell you, it's not much better now than it has been. A couple of hours has left for me searching with no clues. I couldn't find any mention of either Callie's episode or mine anywhere. I let it lie there. There may have been a couple of series since then. Bears have come and gone, but Grumpy was always there from what I've seen, largely unchanged. Sometimes I wonder if there's other bears out there who saw that strange episode as each of the series finished out. Deep down, I really don't want to know. If I did, then I would have had to accept some facts. I really don't want to. Snapping out of my reverie, I then got ready to leave the toys aisle. I turned back to look one last time at the bears, and then almost on impulse, I reached down and picked up the Grumpy Bear. Perhaps I own him that much, and perhaps there are worse things out there that could struggle next to my niece as she slept.